Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and ahead of Celtic's 4th pre-season friendly tonight against Sporting in Portugal, we have a few things to catch up on very quickly, including a transfer update on the arrival of Shin Yamada, Celtic perhaps looking at Jeffrey Schlupp once more as an option this summer, and even an update on Luis Palma, which has grabbed Twitter by storm. So yeah, let's talk about all of that ahead of that game tonight, so we'll be very, very quick. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. Remember, we'll be live for that friendly tonight on the channel. We start at 7:20 for the 7:30 kickoff. We'll have a laugh, we'll have a joke, and we'll watch Celtic take on the biggest team they've played in pre-season thus far in Sporting. A big improvement needed off the back of defeat at the weekend, and we'll be there to watch that tonight. So be sure to join me. Let's talk about all the transfer-related stuff before that. Well, it's the 16th of July 2025, and here we are having to talk about Luis Palma and the possibility of him remaining a Celtic player beyond this summer transfer window. Now, that wasn't on my bingo card for this transfer season. I think we all assumed that Luis Palma would be off, and still some of us, including me, think he will be off. But reports emerging on social media over the past day or so has suggested maybe there's a chance Luis Palma stays with Celtic this season, which has a lot of people up in arms. So Tigo Sports Honduras, a minor sports publication in Luis Palma's homeland, put up this post this afternoon, which widened the eyes of the Celtic support on Twitter. It says that the Honduran forward has been called up for Celtic's pre-season, and everything suggests he will stay with Celtic for the new season. Now, that was the loose translation of their post, and it is the one that has a lot of Celtic fans concerned as to whether or not he will be actually in the plans of Celtic, in the plans of Brendan Rodgers for the upcoming season. But the reason I wanted to kick off this video with this particular story is because I think people are just getting a little bit carried away. Now, my job on this channel isn't to discredit any sources or to call anybody a bullshitter. However, my job is to try and deep dive and fact check and give you as realistic a version of the story as I possibly can. And all I think this story is a little bit of loose translation turning into misunderstanding. I don't think that Tigo Sports Honduras, who aren't a huge source or a very reputable source by any stretch of the imagination, I don't think they have meant to word this in the way they have, and I think they're just kind of putting two and two together because he's returning to pre-season plans with Celtic, which was always going to be the case. If you look at the quote one more time, they say he's been called up for the Scottish club's pre-season, and then from there they've said everything suggests he will stay with Celtic for the new season. And people are just getting a bit carried away, putting two and two together, that this means he's the backup left winger, that he's going to be part of Brendan Rodgers' plans this season. I don't think that's the case. He was always going to return to pre-season plans. He was a late returnee after some pretty late international duty with the Honduras national side. We haven't got him a move sorted yet. He was always going to return to the fold in some way, to train, to keep fit, and to be an option if worst came to worst. But Celtic are still going to be looking for improvements. Celtic are still going to look for other players. And I'm willing to eat this very hat on my head if Luis Palma is a serious option behind Dyson Maeda in that left wing going into the new season. If we don't sign somebody else, if we don't sign a Balak-Wisha, if we don't sign an Oriesetter, if we don't sign anyone, I'm willing to eat the hat on this head. I think some people have seen this quote, and amongst the nonsense of what this transfer window has been thus far, and the just very tentative business that Celtic seem to be doing, I think people are just getting dragged in a little bit just through a silly assumption that some minor publication in Honduras has made. I think it's also easy for that publication to make that assumption when there are no real ironclad links with anyone either. Nobody has been reported to have bid for Palma. We know Olympiacos have knocked back the chance of signing him permanently. I think this is them just kind of going, right, that's the case, he's got to be part of Celtic's plans, when they don't really know if he is or not. The fact of the matter is, in the end of discussion, is don't get too carried away by this wee post on Twitter. And if he's still part of the Celtic squad because we can't get rid of him, okay, fair enough. But I don't think he'll be playing any major part this season. I think it would take a worst case scenario for him to be getting any form of regular minutes. I just wouldn't allow yourself to get too wound up by this. Once again, I will reiterate the point. If clubs don't want to sign a player, if there isn't a queue of teams lining up to sign them, it's not exactly easy to get them out the door, and sometimes you've just got to have a wee bit of patience. But I don't think that it's the dramatic extent that some people are making out through this post. Right, let's talk about a story that also came out this morning that has Celtic fans in a bit of debate. Jeffrey Schlupp has been linked with the club again. He became a free agent, of course, this summer. Crystal Palace released him after the expiration of his contract. And reports in Africa are suggesting that Jeffrey Schlupp is back on Celtic's radar. In fact, here were those headlines. Jeffrey Schlupp has no shortage of suitors. This was a report by Africa Foot this morning. They went on to say that a free agent from July 1st, Jeffrey Schlupp isn't expected to be without a club for long, as several teams are already in the running to secure his services. Last season he was at loan at Celtic but returned to Crystal Palace for his contract to expire. And according to Africa Foot, several clubs are closely monitoring the situation. Celtic are reportedly looking to sign him permanently, and especially without a transfer fee. You just know that that's true when it comes to Celtic, don't you? They also said that other suitors are Hull City, Sheffield United and West Bromwich Albion. And yeah, of course, that's got a lot of Celtic fans talking. Some who wouldn't mind having him back, some that don't want it altogether. Some feel like it's a complete lack of ambition. A free signing coming into the last few years of his career. Does it really improve this Celtic squad? Well, that seems to be the big question. I'm just going to be blunt here. I would be disappointed if Jeffrey Schlupp was chosen over the likes of Flavio Nzinho, who I think Celtic should be going out and trying to sign for that £3-4 million fee, whatever it takes to land him. I think we should be looking for someone that has potential behind them, somebody who brings some ambition into the team. Jeffrey Schlupp would just be a kind of, I don't know, he's there to fill a void until he decides to retire. And I like Jeffrey Schlupp. I think he downed tools a wee bit towards the end. It looked as though he couldn't really be bothered, which puts me off him slightly. But I remember that performance in Munich. I was there. I witnessed it with my own eyes. It was a brilliant performance that gave me the faith that he's the calibre of player that you need for those big games. A guy who's played over 300 Premier League games. But I just feel like it lacks an ambition behind it. I think it just seems very boring and typical of Celtic. I think there's a lot worse options out there, honestly. I think if it came to deadline day, we needed a left back and he was still available, fine. Okay, we've failed to find somebody, to sign somebody, just bring him in. But with time left, Celtic should be a little more ambitious, and I just feel like I would be generally disappointed if he returned to the club. It doesn't help that Jeffrey himself was out spotted training in his Celtic gear from last season, despite being a free agent and despite playing for Crystal Palace for a hell of a lot longer than he did Celtic. It was the Celtic gear he was spotted training in, which of course has added fuel to the fire. And yeah, I mean, listen, maybe Celtic are considering the situation. I'm quite sceptical. I'm just going to use the word sceptical. I still think it's a very easy article to write, considering he's just left the club. The fact that journalists anywhere in the world can see that Celtic are still looking for a left back, it just feels like a very easy article to write. But I certainly wouldn't write off the chances of it happening. Of course, there is a real good chance of it happening. But I hope that we're focusing our efforts elsewhere. I just feel like there's better and more ambitious signings to go for. And despite it being a minor role to play in the team, being a backup to Kieran Tierney, I still want that ambition behind the signing. That being said, I don't think Schlupp's a disaster by any stretch, but I just want a wee bit more. And that would be my opinion. But hey ho, we'll see what happens. I'll keep this short, but let's get the quick update on Shin Yamada. You all know by now, you've heard it this morning on several other podcasts probably. I am last to the party here. Shin Yamada is expected to leave Kawasaki Frontale tonight. That has been made official by the club, and Anthony Joseph in the last hour has provided a further update on the situation. He said this, that Kawasaki Frontale have announced that Shin Yamada will be leaving the club tonight. It's understood he will be joining Celtic in a deal worth around £1.5 million. So he will be joining up with Celtic in the next week, according to those reports by Sky. It could be any day in the next week. Of course, he's got to come over and probably go through the medical procedure and whatnot. And then he'll join up with the Celtic side. I don't think we'll see him play for Celtic for another few friendly games yet. But he's, of course, mid-season, so he's not needing to catch up with match sharpness, match fitness. He'll be straight into the fold, which I suppose is the big positive. And we know he'll be arriving very soon. So Shin Yamada, the next Celtic signing, is he the only striker that's going to come through the door this summer? Well, Callum Osmond has as well. But aside from him, is that it? We'll wait and see. And finally, we're going to talk about Liam Scales, of all people, very, very quickly, because an interesting interview from Liam over the past 24 hours in the tabloids has maybe given some insight as to whether or not Celtic are in for another centre-half. And by what Liam Scales says, it sounds like we certainly are. He was asked about his season last year, the new season coming up, and most importantly, the defensive situation, where he said this, that it's... being at a big club, you expect them to sign a player for almost each position every summer. That's just part of it. That's how it's been for the last few years. So I wouldn't be thinking about that at all. I'm more focused on getting sharp and fit and ready to fight for that jersey at the first game of the season. So, I think that it's definitely something that Celtic are trying to do this summer. Just judging off the stories we've heard from what Brendan knows he needs, and now from what Liam Scales has said, I think that it's still one of the top priorities, as it should be at the club. So hopefully we get more insight on that over the next few weeks, because we really, really need somebody through the door. I'm desperate for another left-footed centre-half to come in, or at least a naturally left-sided centre-half, and we'll wait and see. Right, that does it for today. If you've enjoyed, like and subscribe. You know the script by now. Remember, we will be live tonight, so I'll see you there if you're joining us. If not, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care of yourself, God bless, and I'll see you all next time.